Hey everyone, welcome to the Current Case Podcast. We're a group of four friends discussing the latest current events as they apply to our everyday lives. From foreign policy to local events, we cover it all as best we can in a manner not restrained by the bias of the big media corporations. We may not always agree with each other on certain topics, but that is what makes it all the more interesting. Being able to sit down and have a civil conversation on even the most controversial topics is a necessity for a better society.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of the Current Case Podcast. And today will be a special episode as we have our first guest star. We have Weston. So introduce yourself, Weston.
Hey guys, I'm Weston. I'm a friend of all the guys here. I'm a medical student, actually a second-year medical student. So anything to do with medical, especially a lot of recent issues, I'll have a lot more to say on. Excited to be here.
Okay, so medical school. So what year are you right now?
I'm a second year in medical school.
Well, how would you like to describe your experience overall so far?
So it's been good. Obviously, first 2 years, a lot in the books, not seeing many patients, although we do a good bit of exercises that involve simulated patients. So I have some exposure, but I'll be in the hospitals in a couple months. So
I know this is probably a very interesting time to get into the medical field in the first place, because of course we had pandemic, of course, a couple of years ago, everything else going on, so I'm sure it's probably, even now, right, high flu rates.
There's always something. Applying, I actually applied during a couple of months after COVID started, so, and all the applications, every single application, I had to fill out a question about how has COVID affected your experience and your desire to go into medicine, so it was definitely interesting applying during COVID. We started classes in person, so I don't feel like we were affected as much. The class before us had a lot more, but so it's been interesting so far. Definitely a lot of learning experiences, but it's glad to be where I am now, I'll tell you that.
And then what do you like to do kind of outside of med school? What do you do in your free time?
Well, I like to spend time with friends, obviously, here. So otherwise, I'm a musician. I'm a Christian, so I go to church a lot. So other than that,
So you said you're a musician. What all do you play?
Trumpet, mainly. Started back in middle school. Played all the way through college. And then I picked up a little bit of piano during COVID, which has helped. I've been doing an a cappella group through my medical school. So I sang a little bit. So a couple different things. I've tried to pick up cello recently, but not had a ton of time. So
it's good. It's good to hear. I know, I was trying to apply to law school, which I somewhat consider it similar to medical school in its own right back before COVID started, and once everything hit, it's like I kind of lost my motivation. I actually heard, I'm not sure if this applies to medical school as well, that some law schools are getting rid of the LSAT requirement. So you think they would get rid of the MCAT for medical schools?
I have not heard anything about that personally. I don't foresee them getting rid of the MCAT because they love to stratify people and differentiate people based on one score, because it just makes life easier when you have a million applicants. But our boards tests, our step one of boards, has been going to pass fail now because of test taking stress and whatever that they talked about. So it could happen. I have not heard anything about it, but it could definitely happen.
Be interesting. How would you feel about that if they did?
I don't know. Now that I'm in it, now that I'm mostly through the book years, I do think the MCAT is a pretty decent measurement of your ability to actually learn the material in a speedy fashion. But I also know a lot of my classmates who may have not gotten stellar MCAT scores that will make wonderful physicians. So it's just something that, if you're going to be applying in any of these fields, medicine, law, whatever, you have to be adaptable. Right. So it just matters how people adapt to it in the coming years, I think, is the biggest thing.
All right. Well,
so I know, Jared, you were in band. Do you want to share Jared,
we were in band together.
Yeah, we were in band. I think all.
We were all in band together.
Yeah. So I think all you guys were in band together.
Yeah.
Yep.
All trumpets too. For
Yep.
years.
Yep.
Yep. Still have it. Coming to you.
Yeah, I can technically play it too.
Technically.
Technically.
All right. Ashton, you got yours, right?
Yep, still in its case, right in my room.
You still actively play yours? You play.
I played, like I said, I played it in college, and then COVID hit, and we had they gave us online assignments we had to record ourselves to finish out, because I was actually part of one of the bands. And then after that, there was not really performing, and I didn't have time in my senior year anyway. So I played a little bit, just on my own, but nothing. I wish I could gig again, but not anything like that.
Right.
So I've been seeing a lot of stuff online where, obviously more so with what happened with Hamlin last week.
Yeah.
About all of these athletes just, dropping.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these conspiracy theorists in the comments, this is all caused by the COVID-19 vaccine. Just watch, we're going to get the little banner under our video now because of this.
You put it in the title, it puts it up there, yeah.
But, Weston, what's the link here? Is there a link? And if so, just explain this to the people who are worried about it.
So, it is actually a really interesting topic because, obviously, the vaccine has been a loaded subject ever since it came out, even before it came out. So, there was a guy on the news that had said that he went out and came out and said that was the reason DeMar Hamlin collapsed, and he got a lot of backlash for that. I don't remember exactly who it was, but I know someone did. But let's start with DeMar Hamlin's case and what is most likely to have happened based on the information that we know. And so it's gone around already, but just so I'm not completely basing it off of my second year medical student knowledge, I do have my sources ready. So based off of what they actually told us, the top differential for DeMar Hamlin is a condition called Komodo cordis, which is basically, to put it in not Latin, it's where you have trauma to the chest, usually blunt trauma, that compresses the heart muscle and it causes it to stop. And a little bit of why that would actually happen is you have kind of like a circuit, a conduction system in your heart that keeps your heart beating at a consistent pace and can respond based on the signals that the body gives it. If that is compressed or damaged or whatever it may be due to trauma, like a tackle in DeMar Hamlin's case, certain cells in your heart will stop working. They'll stop regulating your heartbeat, and so you don't have a heartbeat. We see what happens in that case. So, obviously, thankfully, DeMar Hamlin recovered. He's doing well. It appears he kept all of his neurological functions, at least from what we can tell so far, and that's obviously your biggest concern. So it's good in that case, but not everyone is as fortunate. Sometimes people are not able to come off the field, and they unfortunately die on the scene. So, like Matt mentioned earlier, the COVID-19 vaccine, they have published that there have been a rare number of instances of something called thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome, which is basically, again, to translate this not in Latin so people can actually understand it, you get blood clots with a low number of platelets. Platelets are they're not technically a cell, but they're part of your plasma that is responsible for blood clots. So they have shown that the AstraZeneca vaccine can cause this. And there were theories, again, our conspiracy theories that we're talking about, that is why more athletes have been dropping dead on the field recently. So I'd heard of it. I didn't have any definitive evidence of why that may be, but something that we learn a lot in medical school in the first 2 years, classic presentation, we'll have board questions on it, is hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, basically a young athlete working their heart too hard. It can't meet the demands of the body, and then they just collapse. So I found an article published in 2022 that did some autopsy reports of a couple of young athletes who had died with concerns of that was caused by the COVID vaccine, and a couple of middle-aged adults that had died. So basically, in the short of it, what they found is that the heart showed signs of what we call myocardial infarction or heart attack. And the immune cells that would likely be present in the event of a COVID vaccine reaction causing this were actually noticeably absent in the cases that they reviewed. So their conclusion was that because there was no thrombosis or blood clots that were causing these events, because there were no immune cells that would show like an allergic reaction or some sort of reaction to the vaccine, that these are most likely just hypertrophic cardiomyopathy or just working your heart too hard that are causing these deaths. That was what I was able to find, and then I'd be happy to hear your guys' thoughts on all that.
Yeah, I mean, we have to do a little bit of training on, of course, sudden cardiac arrest. They don't get into like big Latin medical terms, but we got to know the basics, everything, how to administer CPR, AEDs, where to find them, of course, what to do in that situation. I know it's one of the listed reasons that a possible cause of sudden cardiac arrest was trauma in the chest.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I kind of just based on everything. Again, I have very limited medical knowledge as well, just the basics. But I think that's kind of the most likely conclusion of what happened to DeMar Hamlin. Of course, now, kind of an update on him. I think he checked out. Checked out VR and on his way back to Buffalo.
Yeah.
So,
I believe he was able to walk. He was able to. He was obviously able to talk with his family. He was able to tweet. So his cognition, all of his mental capabilities were still there, which is very, very good sign.
Right. Were you watching that game when it happened?
Yeah, I was. I was studying and watching at the same time, and I looked away for a bit, and I was like, man, I didn't know at the time. I was like, man, it's been a while since they saw last play. And I was like, what's going on? Then I saw the clip of him stopping Higgins. And I was like, oh no.
I wasn't watching live, just saw everything after. Just kind of got told. And I was like, oh, interesting. And then seeing all that, I was like, wow. They got to him very quickly. That basically saved his life, what it looks like to me. Going to go into cardiac arrest. That's probably the best place to do it. All right, so next thing we want to talk about this evening is a new bill that the House is proposing. Of course, it was kind of a giant shitstorm to get Kevin McCarthy into the House in the first place. It took like 10 tries to actually do it. But now he's actually in, and they are set to vote on a bill that would abolish the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. Of course, catches your attention right away, because last year you saw the IRS was set to receive a bunch of new agents, heavily armed agents as well. To replace the IRS, they're introducing a national consumption tax to replace the existing federal income tax. So what they really want to do here is to upend the Inflation Reduction Act and essentially cut down IRS employees. Essentially the whole goal of this is to eliminate the need for the department entirely by simplifying the tax code with provisions that work for the American people and encourage American growth and innovation. So armed and unelected bureaucrats should not have more power over your paycheck than you do. That's the basic logic behind this bill.
Personally, I would much rather pay not necessarily a flat rate, but like a one-time payment for the tax for the year versus getting nickeled and dimed every time I bought something, every time I sold something, property tax, state taxes, local taxes, just the whole 9 yards.
Right.
Now, I don't know if they'll change the local and state tax code with this, or if it's just federal. But point being, you're taxed on so many little things. Just make it one, and I think that'll also help to lower prices and kind of help consumers in the long run.
Right. Criticism of this bill is that, this also comes from the IRS too, but is that they think House Republicans are making it clear that they are prioritizing the multi-billion-dollar corporations, allowing them to skip out on their taxes, which will make life harder for the middle class if it isn't hard enough already. So
Just get rid of the loopholes. If you're a large multinational conglomerate and you're making over, let's pick an arbitrary number here. If you're making more than like $400 billion a year, flat percentage that they can't try and wiggle out of.
yeah, like personally, I want to see them go after these monopolies, these billion-dollar companies first before like anything else. I mean, they do this first, and they can go after the IRS. But I kind of see the counterpoint there. It's like it's just giving more ammo to the billion-dollar companies, allowing them to really extract money away from the middle class, and the middle class would probably get poorer as a result. So it could work in theory if you go after the billion-dollar companies, but I mean, both parties are pretty much sponsored by these billion-dollar corporations. So will they actually go after them?
No, they're the best people to make the decisions about the big dog corporations, obviously.
Right. So it's like,
Well, they're going to be in charge no matter what. So,
yeah, that's very true. I mean, unless something changes, parties have flipped before. I hope you kind of see a party rebalancing eventually. Parties have changed in the course of history.
Yeah.
I think we need more than a two-party system, though.
Agreed. 100% agreed.
But that's never going to happen.
Not with today's culture. It's so, like... you
Divide
have
and conquer.
Yeah. You have to be on one side or the other, and then if you're not, then, well, sucks for you.
Yeah, and that's not just a problem with politics. That's like a societal built-in problem that's put there on purpose by those that are in power.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I said last time, where's Theodore Roosevelt when you need him?
Exactly, Ashton. I mean, do you think the parties will restructure, though? Like they'll...
Not
change?
on their own.
When was the last time we had a party flip? Like, because we had, like... It was like, whatever it was, last time I remember from history class was Whigs and Democratic Republicans or something like that, and they split.
Yeah, I mean, they've changed over time their personal views. I mean, the Democrats, Republicans did flip, or have flipped on their views before. Even back in the 60s, the parties flipped around. Really, it was Nixon that kind of spearheaded the modern Republican Party, I would say. So it's possible. I mean, Trump, I'm not sure if so you already know he's running in 24. Assuming he's not popular among the other Republicans, is he going to create like his own Republican Party and split the party in half?
I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But even now, if you look at the Republican Party, it looks like there's some internal conflict going on where it's like you've got almost two factions within it. You've got the MAGA Republicans who are like super like devoted to the Republican agenda, and then you've got what those guys call rhinos, Republicans in name only, which are more like moderate guys pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we'll see if it splits. That could have some interesting implications.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not the first time parties have split before, depending on who's running. Teddy actually split the Republican Party when he had his own Bull Moose Party when he ran against Taft, which allowed Woodrow Wilson to win, which I think was the greatest mistake of all. I hate Woodrow Wilson.
I would say, isn't
All our
that...
homies hate Woodrow Wilson.
Isn't that... I mean, in theory, that's just what would continue to happen, right? Because, like, already, if Trump does run, which obviously he's very intent on running in 2024, you're theoretically going to split the Republican vote, just like Teddy Roosevelt did. And then in that case, it's pretty much a guaranteed Democratic vote. I don't see many modern Dem voters going over to either whoever the RNC chooses or Trump. So
Right. And in this case, it's like, I mean, the Democrats, I think they have their own divisions, but at least for this past election, they were able to just push forward Biden, I would say. I think there's a division between the old kind of boomer Democrats and the more, I guess, progressive Democrats. So it'll be interesting to see who they run as well in 24. Biden's going to be the one going forward, or it's going to be a progressive person.
Yeah, well, if the Democrats, split in that way, that would, and the Republicans split like we discussed previously, that'd be kind of cool, I think. Like, that kind of like a four-party system where you've got two more, like, moderate, middle-of-the-road versions of the existing parties, and then the more, like, extreme versions. That could be interesting, I think. Interesting shakeup. Probably won't happen, but it'd be cool if it did.
Right. Yeah, but, I mean, back to this IRS bill, I mean, it's not going to pass the Senate. I don't know. I haven't seen anything if it's passed the House or not. I assume it'll probably pass the House. Probably barely, but it's not going to go anywhere after that, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever side you're on. But that's just kind of how it is. It's going to be a gridlock these next couple of years.
And what we saw coming with the split House and Senate. So
exactly, Republicans should have campaigned better. They could have probably taken the Senate pretty easily, but they didn't. They didn't campaign well at all. They had some pretty bad candidates running.
Yeah, I feel like there were a lot of personal things against a lot of those candidates because of things they said or whatever it may be, and that incentivized the Democratic voters to get out. And that's really, I think that's what makes the biggest difference is in modern elections is getting people emotional. Obviously, it's like that's what Trump did in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were emotional against Trump in 2020, which is why it shifted the way it did. And so it's like, how can you use and abuse social media to get the attention you want for your party? And the most recent election, Democrats were better at that. So
basically, both sides are trying to either take advantage of already existing scandals or they're trying to forge their own scandals to throw at the other party.
whether they're founded well or not.
Yeah, and I mean, this is like a recurring issue with the Republican Party, it seems. They campaign poorly. They don't really advertise themselves beyond smear campaigns. And to be fair, the Democrats kind of do the same, but it doesn't help when you're the party that kind of just expects the people that have been voting for you to keep voting for you, and you expect that to keep you afloat. If you don't try to get new voters, then you shouldn't really be surprised when things swing the way you didn't want it to.
Right. Adapt or die in the political world. And, I mean, this past election's kind of shown the Republicans are not adapting to the current environment right now. So it'll be interesting to see in the future. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be watching this split House and split Senate. I'm expecting impeachment hearings for Biden. Of course, he won't be impeached, but they'll try to pull something on him like they did with Trump. So I feel it. Marking the prediction right now. It's going to happen.
Impeachment's becoming trendy.
I know. It literally is. It's like, impeach. Then just be brief. Impeach.
Hey, you should vote for that House rep again because he started the impeachment.
True.
It seems to be kind of what I discussed during the previous season about what we said regarding cancel culture and that how if something doesn't go away and someone wants it, they go straight to the nuclear option. In this case, they are jumping straight to impeachment if Biden doesn't do something that aligns with their interests.
Exactly, Ashton. I mean, impeachment, of course, reserved for the most severe violations by a president. And now it's like, oh, you said something I don't like, impeach.
It's not even that. It's the president is the opposite party of what we are. Impeach him.
Yeah.
Because we're not in power. It's just getting so petty that it's like the office of the presidency, congressmen, congresswomen, and the judges of the Supreme Court, none of it matters anymore.
True. Scary world to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we're approaching that. You look at Trump, you look at Biden, yes, they both did things that weren't popular, but now it's just, we're not in power, so we're impeaching the other side. And it's just going to keep becoming more and more common,
mm-hmm.
then it's going to spread out to the other branches of government.
And the Supreme Court has like always kind of scared me the way it's going. It's become so like politicized, like especially nowadays. I mean, I always kind of thought of the court law to be politically neutral. I mean, here's what it says. Of course, I mean, we're humans. I guess we interpret things. But at the same time, it's like, this is what it says. You should have more unbiased thoughts on whatever that law should be. Of course, we know presidents now are just plopping people in who align with what they have to say, and they're enacting policies which, I mean, you could argue that are unconstitutional.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you have highly politicized individuals within the Supreme Court, and they're trying to interpret these constitutional laws in whatever way is most beneficial to their party, rather than just interpreting it as written. You know, I'm the kind of guy who looks at it and I think, okay, this is what it says, and it means what it says. But a lot of these guys in the Supreme Court don't really seem to see it that way.
Right.
I think interesting, like you talked about earlier, like medical versus legal. Like this is stuff that like we have to deal with too. Like you mentioned, legally, like yes, they are interpreting the law, but really it should be an unbiased interpretation in an ideal world. And similar to us, like we have to, like they train us, like yes, you have the information, you have to make the diagnosis, but it isn't a diagnosis that like, oh, because I see this more often, I have to call it this because that's what I think. No, you have to be unbiased. You have to do what's best for the patient, just like the Supreme Court should be doing what's best for the country based on the law that is written. And so it's like, I mean, like, I can't just start being subjective and like my future patients, like I can't just say, oh, well, I don't really feel like dealing with this, so I'm going to call it a this so I can give them that and send them out the door. Like, no, you can't do that. Like, you have to do what's best, objective, and morally just.
On that account, I think it's fair to say that Congress, the White House, and the Supreme Court have failed.
I agree with you there, Ash. It's a big statement. Flush it down the toilet, unplug it, delete it. System 32. Try again.
Anarchy?
Just
everything gone?
Anarchy. Anarchy. Exactly.
It's, again, I think it is a consequence, though, like, because they have to appeal to the public and because the public is so reliant on culture revolving around social media, they succumb to that, too. They get in the cattiness, they get in the whatever it may be, and then it makes them really inept at doing their governmental duties, so...
I think exactly what the founding fathers have feared. It's kind of really been put into place here the last decade or so, I would say. Even before that, you can make the argument, but probably since FDR, when Roosevelt really kind of launched or spearheaded the powers of the federal government, and everything since then has been kind of downhill. Right, but we want to talk.
It's trying to creep up the government, you know. We spend all this money with the IRS and everything else. Obviously, that's a source of government revenue. Mm-hmm. But what do they do with this? You look at the FAA. You know, today, what happened? Their entire NOTAM system went down.
Right.
The entire bit of it. Complete ground stop. First time that's happened since 2001, 9/11. And it's like, what kind of systems are they running? What kind of maintenance are they doing? Like, where are our tax dollars going?
Ukraine.
Exactly. They just keep going overseas. Meanwhile, all of our infrastructure, the domestic side is crumbling. And it's like, we have to do something.
SARs are either going abroad or they're going into the pockets of corrupt politicians and businessmen.
What was your honest thoughts of Biden's Build Back Better bill?
It's shit.
Why? I give you reasons why. Because I think that was focused on infrastructure. But why do you think it's shit?
I don't think any of it is really going to go to infrastructure. I think there were too many earmarks. I think a lot of it just went over to countries overseas. I don't think we're going to see a lot of it.
I'm not sure if we mentioned it in previous episodes, but these 300-page bills and everything else. I mean, I'm getting sick of like how lengthy they are because there's so many little things in each page. It's like just keep it brief, keep it a couple pages. Here's what's happening. That's it. Like we gotta stop with these big.
Plus, the politicians, they can't read these multi-thousand-page bills 12 hours before they go to vote on.
Right.
I think that's probably another scheme. How they manage to get away with corruption is that there's all sorts of things that are written in there into the law so they can say it's legally binding, but...
And then also all the false names. Like, we're going to make up a hypothetical bill. All right, let's call it the 2023
Save the Penguins bill.
Save the Penguins bill.
Perfect.
All right.
Let's save the penguins.
Yeah. So off the name, you'd think it has something to do with like penguins and their habitats and everything else. Meanwhile, it's like, well, actually, it's going to be $5 million in funding for this Antarctic research site, plus another $25 million to Israel, plus another $3 billion to aid in Ukraine. It's like, hold on, you named this after penguins, and yet this has nothing to do with penguins.
But Matt, if we stop the Ukraine war, in theory, we will save more penguins.
But does this affect the trout population?
But we could save penguins.
But my point is, like, you can't have all these misleading bill names on there too.
Right.
Again, the funny thing is, I remember learning in history government class is the piggyback legislature. Like, what we're talking about is it shouldn't exist, but it does. If they can relate it in some obscure way, or really even not even that, then they'll just put it on there so they can do get what they want from funding.
Exactly. Remember the mock government or mock bill?
Oh yeah.
I should have wrote a 300-page. I don't know what I was thinking. Should have wrote a 300-page bill, put a bunch of bullshit in it. Would have passed. One would have read and been like, okay, here it is.
Neither of mine passed. Although I was kind of, honestly, back in the day, I was kind of a jerk. So I'm not surprised. Hey, that was emotional voting, just like it is today.
Very true.
Anyway, back to the FAA issue. Ashton, do you have some more to say about that?
Yeah, the FAA's NOTAM system be going down this morning. For those of you who don't know, NOTAMs are notices to air missions.
It used to be Notice to Airmen, although that was changed in December 2021. And because of remote drone operators, the new term is Notice to Air Missions.
Yeah, basically it's a notification system that is supposed to denote unusual activity along certain areas of airspace or at certain airports. Say a runway is closed for maintenance or a beacon is inoperable at an airport, or the ATC tower is offline. Those would constitute as NOTAMs. They're not exactly the same as temporary flight restrictions or TFRs, but they can still be important information to know if you're going to be planning a flight somewhere. And so to have that kind of go down, it certainly is pretty odd because on one hand, it makes you wonder what on earth would cause this to happen in the first place. I think, wasn't it a glitch that caused that in their system?
Yeah, it was some sort of computer glitch.
Computer glitch. Are they going to call it a Russian cyber attack?
No, they've said it was not a cyber attack. That's been made perfectly clear so far.
Okay. So a glitch. Weird.
Apparently, and this is the same day, so it might not be 100% accurate, it was caused because a Windows 95 computer was repeating a BSOD command.
What?
Yeah, a Windows 95 computer.
Windows 95? What?
That's why I said earlier, it's like, where is all of our tax money going to? That the FAA, the ones in charge of the entire airspace,
yeah,
is using Windows 95.
Hey man, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know,
clearly today it just broke.
Well, but today was the first day it broke, right? So it's fine.
Maybe they'll upgrade to Windows 7.
Yeah.
Hi, welcome to Windows 11. All of your files are in the same place. We promise.
It's kind of interesting, though, if they kept it running on 95 because it worked, now it stopped working, what implications does this have, not only on the government, but in other areas? I mean, I used to work at an amusement park, and I'll tell you this, most of the roller coasters, their computers run on like 95 or Vista or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, those haven't really had any problems, but what if they do? Could we see other areas of life upgrading their systems as a result of this, maybe?
That's possible. I mean, other Cedar Fair parks, I mean, I've heard like incidents happening, but most of them in like human people walking in front. Well, there is a top floor dragster, but that's more of like a mechanical.
That was kind of a freak accident.
Yeah.
Like something, I mean, I don't want to say the maintenance crew is at fault because I don't know that for sure. But what happened was a part came off of the green train and struck a woman in the head in line for the ride, which obviously should never happen. So that was more of a freak accident, not really related to the computers or anything. I know another guy at Cedar Point died, I think, in 2016. He was struck by a raptor, but that was because he climbed like 2 8-foot fences to get into that area, looking for a cell phone that they never found in the ride area.
Yeah.
I think in regards to the FAA's noting system, hopefully this glitch turns out to be just a one-off. I mean, if it's worked thus far, it's probably, this likely sounds like it'll be a one-off, but it also might seem like they need to update their hardware.
I just think it's funny how the FAA had to put out a NOTAM that their NOTAM system wasn't working. It's like, that's the American government for you.
Yeah, I mean, I see your point exactly. It's like every day at least every week, I see these large, big billion-dollar aid packages to Ukraine. At the same time, stuff like this is happening. And it's like, exactly. We're about our own infrastructure first.
But can we afford one Windows 11 PC and a software engineer to make sure that it works? Find out next time.
Next time. An accident's waiting to happen. That's a good way to put it, I think.
Definitely sounds like the federal government needs to reprioritize a lot of these things.
Completely agree there. All right. Anything else you guys want to add?
Yeah. So, what do you guys think about Biden having classified documents from his time as VP?
I mean, I'll have to see more into how big of an investigation they're going to launch on this. And of course, they're pinning down Trump for the basically same exact things. So it's like, might as well be fair about it. We're going to pin down Trump, might as well.
If you're going to play ball, you better play ball.
Hey, like I said earlier, it's trendy. We're getting in the trends, okay? It's all it is.
Yeah.
Or you just chalk it up to, they held the position of president, vice president. Some of this stuff might just be need to know. And if you're at that level, maybe you have some stuff that you need for the office.
I mean, take the high road? Nah.
Of course they're Of course.
No, I'm not doing that. Are you kidding me? That would require like just a moderate tone. All about being extreme. Go after Biden, impeach him 10 times.
Yep.
Yeah.
Impeach him for every single, shred of stuff that he had there.
Yep.
It's the same thing they do with Trump or anyone else. So fair is fair.
Yeah. This also might kind of boil down to a case of he said, she said. From what I can gather, it's just pretty much just another day at the office in a way. As both sides try to find more dirt to sling at each other. True. Nothing out of the ordinary there, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, very true.
And we had the Walmart cashier.
Yes. Yeah.
I know Charity sent that story to me.
Yeah, so I'll give a couple of details and we can share our thoughts about it. I mean, this is supposed to be like a heartwarming story, but kind of like more sad than anything else. So, involves an 82-year-old U.S. veteran, Warren Marion. He worked at Walmart, worked there for quite a while now. Another gentleman named Rory McCarthy saw him. He owned his own company and decided on TikTok kind of let him talk about himself, share his life, and also organize essentially a big donation scheme for him. And he was able to raise $100,000 for Warren Marion and it finally allowed him to retire from Walmart and leave it. So, I mean, like the news, mainstream media is all presenting it. It's like this big heartwarming story, but it's like, I mean, this is pretty sad, just the circumstances. This 82-year-old veteran forced to work at Walmart. It's like, I'm fucking 82 years old. I mean, I don't know how many sons I'm going to see left. It's like, forced to work at Walmart to survive. It's so sad. Like, how can we treat our elderly like that? Especially a veteran as well.
Yeah. I will say also this much. If this is how one story ends with one veteran finally getting to enjoy the last years of his life in retirement, there's also you must also take into consideration that there's also several other stories that don't end so well. I know in the aftermath of Vietnam, there was a lot of homeless veterans.
Still are today too.
Yeah, and I'm also kind of wondering just how many veterans of the recently concluded War on Terror found themselves in the same situation. I mean,
It's almost like the VA doesn't do enough for its veterans. What a concept.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Like, where are our tax dollars going? Like, to the war in Ukraine, we've got homeless citizens and homeless veterans even here. Like, what are we doing?
Right.
Why is this money going there?
Yeah.
It should be helping us.
Well, this is kind of controversial too, but the left, Ukraine. Also the left, we have to take care of our homeless population. Everything else, yet, what are you doing to solve it?
yeah.
You just make it a talking point to feel virtuous.
Performative activism is what it is,
Exactly.
frankly.
You're not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
They talk about it. I would think Biden made a point to talk about it in some of his campaigning speeches for the 2020 election. And obviously, not on his priority list.
Yeah, I think kind of what I was saying, like what I was saying earlier. In theory, we should have plenty. In an ideal government without corruption, we should have enough money to support both the Ukraine war effort as well as trying to solve our problems at home. The only problem is we've got issues of corruption going on that are basically meaning that politicians and businessmen are pocketing a lot of these fees and barely leaving anything for anything else.
But this is why I like Ron DeSantis so much. Now, he's outspoken, he has his own quirks and issues, but Florida's budget has been balanced for quite a while, and they have so much of a bonus that they've been able to effectively cut like half the taxes in their state because they don't need the money. So how can we do that on a federal level and just make the country better for everyone?
That'll probably be something for, I guess, our generation to figure out when we finally come of age and we can kick those old geezers out of Congress and the White House and Supreme Court.
We got a whole cabinet here, right? Right?
Yeah, something like that.
President, Vice President. I got the Surgeon General. I got that.
There you go.
I got it.
But still, in all seriousness, I think it might be best for us to try and figure out solutions to these now, so that way when the time comes, we can be ready. Because the guys in office right now are not going to be there forever. Sooner or later, they're either going to die or they're going to leave office voluntarily or not.
But you still have fairly young people in Congress and in other offices right now.
I don't think enough.
True, but AOC isn't particularly old.
No, she's not even. She's just old enough to run for president. Not quite old enough. I don't remember.
I think she's a little young. I think she's like 32.
32 or 33.
Yeah, like that.
Like, that's great. We have one. Wonderful. One out of, 435 House seats and 100 Senate seats?
At least Nancy Pelosi is finally gone.
Yeah, finally.
Like 140.
Thank God.
Well, okay.
She gave me the best insider trading advice. Oh.
Yeah, Pelosi Capital was OP, honestly.
Like, okay, I would love for the 2024 election, can we have a candidate even under the age of 70, like, at this point? Like, that would be monumental according to the last couple of elections.
A lot of people don't want to run because all it is smear campaigns. So young people are like, you have your whole life ahead of you. Why would you want to risk?
Yeah, very true. They're going to dig up something from your past, whether or not it's like 20 years ago. It's like, oh, no.
Yeah, this is a soapbox rant for another time, but this is why, social media is so destructive. It's like, because you can dig up all these random things, and it's like, never, even if you've improved as a person, you can't leave your past behind you.
Yeah.
So,
Still, kind of like I said, if we want to see improvement, we got to start somewhere, preferably sooner rather than later.
yeah.
It's a great talking point, Ashton. You should campaign on it and never act on it.
Yeah, really. Here's your slogan: do something.
Pass a bill.
That's not 500 pages with a bunch of random things in it. That would be the first step, I think.
Well, the interesting thing is, I think at least some of the Republicans are kind of hearing their target demographic, is like people kind of like us, our age, into their 30s and 40s, and they're saying, "Hey, you need to cut term limits. You need to cut page bills. You need to fix the naming of these bills." So I think it's finally starting to get introduced, but I hope they continue it and actually change and don't make it a fad.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, if we could see a term limits bill actually pass through both the House and Senate, that'd probably be the most productive bill we've seen in the last 30 years.
Yeah,
Not longer, probably.
I think so. Would it pass stuff? No, not right now, at least.
But like I said, when our time comes, we'll probably, I guess, if anything else, we'll take matters into our own hands.
And did you guys also see, continuing on from last episode, Andrew Tate, who's now been hospitalized?
The best discussion subject.
Andrew Tate. I saw today his bail was it was related to his luxury cars. Something was denied from him. We'll double check that.
If he was a top G, it wouldn't have been denied. Because he's a bottom G. I mean,
Very true. Well, he's a bottom.
They did not publish, which is not surprising, but they did not publish anything about Top G's reason for going into the hospital.
It says he was suffering from certain ailments.
That tells you
What do you mean by
absolutely
that?
nothing.
So, Weston, what are certain ailments? Can you give a medical explanation for certain ailments that might require you to see a
okay.
specialist?
So what? Okay. So let me break it down. So what that translates to is screw off. I'm not going to tell you anything.
Precisely.
That's like, and which, in their defense, they're required by law to not say anything unless he specifically discloses it. That's why we don't have, like, harkening back to what we started with, we don't have a ton of information about exactly what Damar Hamlin's condition was, other than what we saw on the field and what he has released through social media. But yeah, I don't know. Obviously, if Top G left the hospital after one day, then he's doing just fine.
so he probably won't die of suddenly then. I mean, I know that's
not of medical causes. That I
The
can
Matrix.
That's the Matrix. The Logan Paul, did you see that? He tweeted something about the Matrix. He's like, the Matrix is very real. Now he's been under controversy as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
think
there is some premise to the entire Matrix bit, right? All it is like these shadowy elites in power who don't want to lose it. They'll kind of like manipulate things to their liking. That's the basis for it. Now, how far down it goes and how much they'll like censor individual people, who knows? Who cares?
I think a lot of it's just accountability for your shitty actions, and they're just blaming the Matrix as like, oh fuck, I've been caught.
Well, it wouldn't be Logan Paul's first time in hot water. I think everyone
Or second, or third, or fourth, fifth.
or at this point, maybe 100th.
What apology video are we on now? I'm sorry, I left that pig. I did not mean to.
Hey, at least it's not the Japanese forest video.
Oh,
True.
Like, how does one recover?
So anyway, the next subject is...
I think our last topic for tonight's going to be what happened in Brazil as of late.
Yeah, so what happened in Brazil?
Yeah, so this happened 2 weeks ago, or about a week ago.
About a week ago.
Yeah. So they had an election back in November, which oversaw I might screw up his name. I don't speak Portuguese, unfortunately. Bolsonaro. I'm pretty sure is how you pronounce his last name.
Bolsonaro.
Yeah, I think I'd say Bolsonaro. But it saw him, of course, being kicked out of office. His opponent won the election. And then just last week, there was essentially an attempted coup where members or supporters of him stormed their own governmental building to essentially try to bring him back. They trashed the offices, caused a big riot on the streets, and the Brazilian government responded pretty immediately. They arrested thousands of people, and of course now the comparisons are with our media is the attachment to January 6th with the whole attempted coup on that day, because his nicknames, or Bolsonaro has been called a Brazilian Trump before, just in terms of his policies and personality. So the big question is, it fair to make that connection? What happened on January 6th, is it influencing other people to do that in their own office? I don't know how much we want to go into that, because of course January 6th is still a pretty controversial topic right now. But anyone have any thoughts?
What has become of democracy today?
Right. I mean, one thing I do get annoyed with is people claiming election fraud, right away. There's not much conceding elections anymore. In this case, Bolsonaro did concede the election, but also at the same time, he was apprehensive about everything. He's like, it could go either way. So it's we don't really see our candidates conceding elections anymore. Even Arizona, Senate race, I don't think she actually ever conceded the election either. She wanted to challenge it.
Interesting. I don't know. Seems just disrespectful, honestly. Again, that just goes back to the culture of it. It's there's no, okay, we assume this is fair, and if I win fair and square, then I win fair and square. If you win fair and square, if you win fair and square, I'll be respectful, I'll concede. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just that's not, it doesn't fit with the culture, right? It doesn't, most people, no one wants to see that. It's not entertaining.
Right.
It's more entertaining to say, no, this was false, I should have won, I did win, whatever it is. And, well, I think it's it's good to keep those things in mind just in case there is a corruption, just in case the thing was actually fraudulent or whatever it may be. Once the data comes out, once the fact-checking comes out that, hey, no, this was fair, it's how are you making yourself look to your voter population or your people around you, your family, whatever it is? How are you making yourself look at that point? My answer is not very good. Not a very upstanding person.
Right. Like I said, it really is kind of a shame how things have evolved this way, not just in America, but also in Brazil as well, as we've just discussed. What has become of democracy today?
Yeah, that's politics for you. Nobody's civil anymore. Everybody's always screaming at one another. It's pathetic.
I think it's a bigger sign of society today, though. It's just a manifestation of people's unhappiness. I know, Weston, earlier you were talking about how since COVID happened, you've noticed a lot of people have just been angry.
Yeah, no, that's not always the case. I mean, I've definitely seen a lot of good and generous acts and good-hearted things. Kind of we talked about the TikTok campaign earlier, people donating money, or Mar Hamlin. I'm getting my players mixed up. Mar Hamlin's charity raising $6 million, $7 million, a lot in just span of 2 days, and in that case, a lot of the good came out, and people are really happy to see that. But otherwise, again, politics, or just general interactions, how people interact with each other, social media online. I mean, people will create TikToks back and forth to yell at each other, argue with each other. It's people just seem so irritable. They just want to fight. They want conflict. They want to, and maybe it's because they're bored. Maybe it's because, and I would say it's almost certainly because during COVID we were all cooped up, we didn't have social contact. That's not good for social creatures like us. But I don't know, it's just people are angry. They want to be angry, it seems to me, at least in some cases. So
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Like, sure, like there's probably been studies on this if there haven't been already. But look into that. Get a psychologist to explain this, but like just basic general interactions. I mean, I think COVID was kind of like a catalyst to everything. I'd argue it probably was going downhill before that point, anyways. I mean, I hate to say it, but like, you could argue that, at least in the U.S., the Trump campaign in 2016, how nasty that was, going back and forth, really just kind of pushed things over the edge. And then once shutdowns happened, psychological aspect of being isolated definitely caused something, I would say.
again, you'll notice, again, I know I harp on this a lot, but there's even before that, since the rise of social media, really I think the big thing that precipitated this. Because people can hide behind their profiles, they can hide behind their keyboard, they don't actually have to face people. So, and that's a whole nother rant. I could get my soapbox out. Anyone have a soapbox? Do you have a soapbox anymore? But, thank you, man. I appreciate it. That's a rant for another time. But I think it's just a lot of precipitating factors came one after another. And for some people, it was the 2016 election, the straw that broke the camel's back. Some people it was COVID. Some people it was mandates post-COVID or during COVID, however you want to say it. So it's an interesting thing. I don't have any studies that they're ready for that, but I think it's definitely something interesting to talk about it over the next years or even decades.
Yeah, definitely.
For me, it's businesses not being open late anymore. I used to be able to stroll into Kroger until 1 a.m. or Meijer 24 hours. Now Kroger closes at 11, Meijer closes at midnight. It's pathetic.
It makes you want to start fights on TikTok.
It makes me want to have my society moment.
We live in a society.
It's true though. Like things are like we talked about. Things are going to online. They're not like even if you're just going to the store, right? You're going to pick up your whatever your Cheez-Its, right? You're going to pick up whatever you want, and you go. You see some people at the store. You maybe see somebody that you know, somebody from the area. You talk with your cashier. Whatever it is, those small little social interactions as we get less and less and less, or people working online, stuff like that. It affects us.
Yeah.
It pretty prominently affects us. So then that translates into culture and how we approach other people. So it's the whole thing.
Yeah, it certainly is kind of sad to see society, I guess, devolve in this sort of way. While there certainly is a lot to criticize about the way certainly Trump handled the initial pandemic as well. I feel that most people, a lot of the anger I feel is also not exactly being directed towards where it should have gone, which I feel is towards the Communist Party of China and how they basically allowed this whole thing to happen in the first place. They could have prevented it, but they chose not to.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder why we're even doing business with them and still doing business with them. Unless you decide to factor in corruption and greed.
I think the problem is we're way too reliant on them already.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, and I feel that's another thing that's going to have to change if things are going to get better.
I'm not going to rehash my thoughts on China. I think we talked about that in the previous episode, our kind of overall thoughts on China.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say anything I've already said here. Well, thank you, Weston, for coming on. Really appreciate having you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. It's always good to have someone on, just like different background altogether compared to us schmucks on here. So, first guest star, so you get that honor. I frame your portrait somewhere.
Oh, do I get a framed portrait?
Framed portrait.
It's a good resume builder.
There you go. I've been on the
That's right. I'll take it straight to all the Ivy Leagues. Did you know?
Why have you know?
Well, get me in everywhere. No problem.
Work on this podcast.